Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Andrea Baum. I'm the Health and Wellness Coordinator here at Fred Beams. If you don't know me by my face, you probably know me by my zillion emails. But I am actually really grateful that we had this opportunity today for a men's health, preventative health, essentially, lunch and learn. And please, at any time, if you want to come up and grab some more food, you can. Also, make sure you're signed in and also have your ticket for the Apple Watch and grab an evaluation card as well, if you could do that for us. And I want to also thank Mr. Beans for this opportunity. He has a special relationship with his doctor, which is so wonderful. And Dr. Weeder came here all the way from Jefferson to be with us today. So I want to thank him for his time.
Thank you.
And he has a long list of credentials, but I am going to let him explain that. But I also wanted to have Fred introduce him and his relationship with his doctor. So thank you all for coming today, and don't forget to sign up for everything. And thank you once again.
Thank you.
It's nice meeting you.
No, it's nice to meet you.
Absolutely.
It's a real honor and a real pleasure. I didn't think I'd have this opportunity to introduce you. Well, first of all, go to Jefferson. I want to get emotional. Excuse me. I had a little bit of a problem myself, so I got referred to Dr. Weeder down at Jefferson. And what I couldn't believe, and I went in the hospital here in Doylestown, what I couldn't believe was that night when I went home, they called my wife. And frankly, I didn't expect that from a doctor at Jefferson. And then you followed up with it. And to me, that's kind of unusual. It's not what I expected in medicine. And I really want to personally thank you for my part. I try not to get emotional because I get upset with myself. Yeah, I know that. It was, you just don't think of a guy at Jefferson Hospital calling a little guy up in Doylestown and asking how he's doing. It really meant a lot to me. So I hope that's helpful to you in your practice in your life. I've always been a guy myself to want to give back to people who work with us. And I think part of our company, I had breakfast with Dan Lynch today. And I think Chris and I and Tony went to visit a dealership yesterday. I'm just telling the doc, they didn't have the dress code. I didn't know who the hell worked there. So I think that the discipline of our company and the things we're doing about healthy living, I think having you here, not just to talk about men's health, but to talk about urology. I think that men sort of keep to themselves and don't talk about their personal problems. And part of our job is, I always think of this place, I don't always share this with people, but I think of this as a private school. Okay? So if you were going to go to a private school and drop your son or daughter off, you would say, you want them to have a better education. I just read a book about Winston Churchill. And Winston, the first school he went to, he got beat pretty bad. He get 7th grade, 7 years old, in a private school, and getting whipped all the time. And his caretaker saw how bad his back was. And they removed him from that school and sent him to another school. But Winston's claim to fame was history, but it was just educational. So I think about this, my company, right? This company, I got an ad in the paper for students, Better Homes Garden, because that's what it used to be. Okay, Better Homes Garden, Homes Garden. Look it up, and so it said, send your son to Admiral Farragut's military school. I just used it as a name, but it wasn't Admiral Farragut. We educate the whole boy physically, mentally, and morally. And when somebody comes to work for our company, what I want to do is share with them and educate them physically, mentally, and morally. And I think when most people leave here, they leave here better than when they came. So that's a hell of a bad way to introduce Dr. Weiner, but I guess what we'd like to do, Doctor, is have our people be better than our competitors. And I think we are. Well, thank you.
Thank you. And I have to say that a lot of you, thank you for that introduction. I don't know that I've experienced a company that has that philosophy, so supportive of the people that work here. And I'd like to thank you and the organization and your family for inviting me here, because as much as you look forward to it, I look forward to it a lot more. I've always been interested in men's health because I think men focus on repair, women focus on prevention. And I think you can think of your body like a car. So I had a car for 13 or 14 years, and I sold it with 145,000 miles on the clock. And it was the original clutch, and it was the original transmission. And the only thing I did to that car, besides replace a couple of gaskets, because it was a convertible that went bad, were routine maintenance and tires. And I sold the car, and it was a 13-year-old vehicle. And the car, you could have eaten off the engine and eaten off the paint if you wanted to. And the reason that I was able to do that is because I maintained it. And this is your business. How many people come in with vehicles like that? Very few. And when somebody shows up to the dealership with a broken vehicle, and you look at the car, and it looks like the morning after a fraternity party. When was the last time you changed the oil? When was the last time you changed the transmission fluid? When was the last time you washed and waxed the car? When was the last time you balanced the tires? When was the last time you did any type of maintenance? And then they complain to you that it costs so much money to get it fixed. And when you tell them that it's a lot more involved than they thought it would be, and they're upset, in the back of your mind, you're thinking to yourself, you could have avoided all of this. Am I wrong or am I right?
You're right.
And they don't want to really go through that experience. But our bodies are the same way. And if we take care of ourselves, and if we maintain ourselves, and do everything that we can do, we can try to limit the damage. Because unfortunately, we have genetics behind us, and we have habits behind us, and we've got lifestyles that we take along, and we can't really modify genetics. But we can modify lifestyle, we can modify things that we eat, we can modify how we exercise, and we can modify enough factors that we can positively impact your long-term health. And I look at Mr. Beans, and he sent me we've been communicating, and he's up at 5:30 in the morning. And he just said to me downstairs, he said, I got up this morning and I feel like I could win a war. And he's a little older than most of us.
Older than all.
Well, but, that speaks to energy, but also how you approach your health. So, my point is, men focus on repair, women focus on prevention. Let's move more to the prevention side. There's a lot to talk about. I'm going to focus on a couple of things. I'm going to limit my talk. I'm watching the clock at 12:07. I'm going to absolutely stop, a hard stop at 12:30, because a lot of guys sent in questions, and I'm going to answer those questions. And, I'd be happy to come back in the future if you want me. So, I started this men's health program at Jefferson about 10 years ago. It was a long time until it got off the ground. But the idea is to encompass men as a whole. And I want men to look at their urologist the way our wives, girlfriends, females look at their gynecologist. Because women share things privately with their gynecologist, perhaps they're not talking to their family physician about. And none of this discussion is meant to denigrate our family physicians and internists, because they're handling things like blood pressure, sugar diabetes, headache, intestinal issues, lung issues, asthma, allergies, all the things and they're limited to time because they're seeing so many people a day. But when you come to the urologist, it's, in my mind, the time when you should be able to sit down and have a unhurried conversation to talk about things that perhaps you're not able to talk to other people about. And that's what I want our program to be like. So I'm guessing that I can do that. So male aging is a real problem. Men have a higher morbidity and mortality than age-matched women. Some of that is genetic and some of that is lifestyle. Men cost the healthcare system than women because they seek care at a more advanced stage of disease. Repair, not prevention. Women visit the doctor 150% as often as men. Now, why is that? Well, because men, because of being men, hunter-gatherer, that kind of whole thing, we get up in the morning, we go to work. We work a long, hard day. We come home at the end of the day, and we get up the next morning and do it again. And in the evening, you've got other family responsibilities to do, and we think we're invincible, and we think that the reasons we can't go to the doctor, I'm too busy, I can't afford the time off, I have to provide for my family, there's nothing wrong with me. And the only reason that men really go to the doctor, as a rule, as an urgency, is if they can't urinate, they're having trouble in the bedroom, they're bleeding somewhere, or very commonly, their wife, significant other, spouse, I'll use the terms, girlfriend, I'll use the term interchangeably today, they tell them to go. They make the appointment, and they force them to go, because they're afraid something's going to happen to us. Women, on the other hand, are a lot more intelligent and a lot more in tune with their bodies. We're just not trained that way. Socially, economically, that's just the way we are. So I'm trying to reverse that. Urology is the traditional specialty involved in men's health care. Quality of life is dependent on our urinary and sexual function, either primarily or secondarily, because that's really what we center around. Male-specific problems in urology. Enlargement of the prostate, voiding difficulty, sexual function. There's a direct correlation between the two. We worry about prostate cancer, and this thing, the metabolic syndrome, which I'm going to spend a little time talking about, which is an overlap, kind of like an overlap of cardiovascular disease, diabetes mellitus, and how it affects our cardiovascular system and our overall functioning. So to go back to my car thing, if you're, and I apologize if this is going to be a stupid analogy, but, if your engine's running too rich, you're going to foul the plugs. The valves are not going to open and close properly. The exhaust is going to get clogged with all that bad deposit. We're going to affect the catalytic converter. If our engine's running too lean, issues with that. The car's not going to run well. It's going to knock. You're not going to have any power. If our coolant isn't up, then the car's going to overheat and the engine's not going to run well. If we don't have enough oil, or the oil isn't changed regularly, you get the analogy. So the metabolic syndrome is kind of like that underlying thing where everything is interchanged and everything interacts with each other, and you can't have something out of kilter and not expect it to affect everything else. So prostate anatomy. Let's talk about what our bodies are like. We've got our bladder, which is nothing more than a stupid bag of muscle. It has two functions, filling and emptying. That's all the bladder does. Fills, empties. And problems occur when the bladder can't fill or it can't empty. Commonly, that's because of the issue of the prostate, but that's not the only reason it can happen. But typically, so the prostate enlarges as men get older. It's just a natural thing. And as it does, the bladder muscle has to work harder and harder. But the bladder muscle is a different type of muscle. The bladder muscle is not like our bicep, where the more you go to the gym and work out, the heavier you can lift, the more you can, the bladder muscle gets stronger and stronger as it gets thicker and thicker and thicker. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger until a point where it just doesn't start to work anymore. And then the efficiency of the bladder's function begins to fall off. So we begin to retain a little bit more urine. And now the bladder's working harder and harder. And meanwhile, our prostate's growing as we're getting older, the natural part of the aging process. Now the bladder has even more work to do and is not able to do that as well. So we begin to retain urine, and that leads to a bunch of problems. Number one, symptomatically, I'm up at night. I have a slow stream. My stream stops and starts. I have a strong urge to go that I can't control. I'm developing infections. I'm developing bleeding. And down the line, there are tubes, and here's an example of one here. There's two of them from each kidney called a ureter. Urine can sometimes back up to the kidneys and affect kidney function. And when we start to affect kidney function, that leads to kidney damage. lead to high blood pressure, which can lead to kidney failure, and that's one of the more common causes down the line of people who need dialysis. So again, everything's related. Prostate cancer. Well, let's step back a second. Let me just mention, what does the prostate do? The prostate is a gland which produces fluid. Part of that fluid neutralizes sperm. Part of that fluid is antibacterial. And at the time of ejaculation, the prostate closes at the neck of the bladder, so the ejaculation fluid has nowhere to go but out. That's the function of the prostate. We also think that the prostate has a direct effect as a gland on testosterone. So that's part of the underlying issues with the prostate. Now, the prostate can develop cancer, and that's where that PSA test comes. And that's that PSA test that we talk about. And men who are 50 years of age and older should have an annual PSA and an annual rectal exam, because PSA is not a test for cancer. PSA is a protein produced by prostate tissue. If you have prostate tissue in your body, you're going to have a detectable PSA. PSA really relates to the value over time. So the higher the PSA, the greater the risk cancer may be there. The lower the PSA, the lower the risk cancer may be there. But not all cancers produce a lot of PSA. And there are some men who have very large prostates that produce a lot of PSA, but they don't have cancer. So we tend to follow the PSA over a period of time, and that's why it's important to do both tests. But that's the PSA answer that everybody talks about and what we do about prostate cancer. And why is this so important? Because if we find prostate cancer very, very early, you can be cured 100%. I'll say that again. If we find prostate cancer early, the chances of being cured, nothing's 100%. Okay, so the statistic is about 99%. If we find it early enough. Now, not all prostate cancers are the same, just like the analogy I use there are people in my family, for example. Most of us are nice. There's a couple of people in my family not so nice. We all have those, right? The majority of prostate cancers are like our family. Most of them are very slow growing. Most of them are not life-threatening. But there's a couple of types of prostate cancers that are really bad actors. And those types of prostate cancers can be lethal, which is why it's very important to get checked. Because if you have a routine run-of-the-mill, yeah, don't worry about it. A lot of times we're telling men now, yeah, you have it, don't worry about it. Come back in 6 months, we'll see you. No treatment. But there are some other men who, if they don't get treated, will die. And that's why it's important to be evaluated. So that's a take-home lesson. If you're taking notes, that's the note to take about prostate cancer. Let's talk about that metabolic syndrome. It's associated with high blood sugar, high blood pressure, thickening of the blood, which leads to blood clots, endothelial dysfunction. What does that mean? The lining cells of the blood vessels. They're not as porous. They're not as flexible. They're not as pliable. It's like an old radiator hose. And as soon as you touch it, it cracks. You want that to be able to expand and contract with varying temperatures and varying degrees of need. So that's important because that relates to how your blood vessels work in your body, particularly when it comes to erections. Because that's how the mechanism occurs. It's nothing more than hydraulics. Obesity, inflammation, dyslipidemia. In other words, problems with your lipids in your blood, which leads to fatty deposits, which causes the blood vessels not to work well, which gives you this endothelial dysfunction. And you hear words about triglycerides, HDL, LDL, high-density lipoproteins, low-density lipoproteins, and low testosterone. Metabolic syndrome affects all of these. And when you have endothelial dysfunction caused by all of these things, it leads to difficulty with lower urinary tract symptoms, the prostate symptoms I was talking about, as well as difficulty with sexual function. So it's very important that we monitor our blood sugars, our blood pressure, because again, to go back to my analogy of the car, all of these things are interrelated. Risk factors for cardiovascular disease. High blood pressure or hypertension, it increases your risk of heart disease, heart attack, and stroke. High blood cholesterol, that hyperlipidemia, that dyslipidemia I was talking about. One of the major risk factors is high blood cholesterol because it leads to these fatty deposits within the blood vessels. So now you're taking a vessel that's this big and you're putting all this fatty substance into it, and now it's getting this big. But what does your tissue want? Your tissue wants oxygen. Same thing with the car. I'm going back to the car again. Now you've got a clogged line somewhere. So what's going to happen? You're not going to get enough fuel if it's a fuel line. If it's something in the cooling system, the car's not going to run cool enough. So now the engine has to work harder, and that's what your heart is doing. The blood vessels are getting narrower and narrower. Your brain wants oxygen. Your kidneys want blood. Your lungs need blood. All your tissue needs blood. So what do they? They're sending signals back to your heart. Work harder. I need more blood. Work harder. I need more blood. So your blood pressure goes up. Diabetes. Well, what does diabetes do? Diabetes affects the way the blood vessels respond in terms of contraction and relaxation. Diabetes affects the way these fatty substances can be deposited within blood vessels. Obesity speaks for itself in terms of fatty substances in our bloodstream. Smoking. The worst thing you can do, because it raises blood pressure. It creates endothelial dysfunction. It decreases available oxygen to tissue. It impacts upon the way our system manages itself. And I'm not even talking about the cancer risk. Because, yeah, what does smoking cause? Lung cancer, right? We all hear that? It's the number one cause of esophageal cancer. It's the number one cause of bladder cancer, where people have to have their bladder removed, one of the surgeries I do. You have to remove your, and you're wearing, in order to urinate, you have a collection bag. Nobody wants that. Kidney cancer. It's the most potent drug, nicotine, to take a blood vessel like this and make it like this. So it raises blood pressure. Now your heart's even working harder. Who smoked? At least once in their life. Who's ever tried a cigarette? Once. Okay. What would happen the first time you smoked? You coughed and you got dizzy. You got dizzy because you didn't have enough blood flow, because the smoke displaced all the oxygen from your blood vessel, from your blood. And you coughed because your lungs weren't getting enough oxygen. Now, over a period of time, you overcome those reflexes, but it's happening every time you pick up a cigarette. So your heart's now even to have to work harder. Plus, it's causing all those other issues. So, second thing to write down, capital letters, underscore with a yellow marker, no tobacco. Physical inactivity speaks for itself. Need I talk about the importance of exercise? 20 minutes, 30 minutes, at least 3 times a week to get your heart rate up. Because that actually will decrease the bad lipids in your bloodstream and increase the good lipids in your bloodstream, the HDLs and the LDLs. The HDLs are good, the LDLs are bad. More exercise raises your LDLs, drops your HDLs, lowers your risk of heart attack and stroke. Gender. Males have a higher risk of all these issues than females. It's just the way we're made. And heredity. Can't get around that. Dad had heart disease. Mom had heart disease. Chances are you're going to have heart disease. See your doctor. Get your blood checked. Do your blood work once a year. Risk factors. Number one, I listed tobacco. Number two, body weight. And again, heredity, importance of blood studies, and maintaining good blood pressure. Let's talk about colon cancer quickly. Family history. If you have a first-degree relative, age 40 or 10 years before the earliest diagnosis, you need colonoscopy. Second and third-degree relative, colonoscopy, age 45 to 50. Who likes colonoscopy? Nobody. The worst part is the prep. The best part is when you have it done, they put the intravenous in your arm, and the doctor says, I'm going to count backwards from 10 to go to sleep. And most people just say 10. And then you wake up, and it's like it's all done, right? It's the prep that's the bother. But you only need it, current recommendations, if you're negative, and I'm not a gastroenterologist, but if you're negative, you probably only need it every 7 to 10 years. So if you start when you're 50 and you get it, let's say 3 times in your life, not so bad. The consequences are a lot worse. What about Cologuard? You know, that thing that you hear the advertisements, you take it up, and everybody's like, yeah, nobody wants to come see me because they don't want a rectal exam, and they don't want me to cystoscope them, and they don't want to have a biopsy, and they don't want me to do all, they don't want me to take out my Snap-on toolbox. Right? Right? So Cologuard, oh great, I don't have to do the colonoscopy prep, I don't have to go to sleep, I don't have to miss a day from work. The problem is Cologuard can detect 90% of cancers, but it doesn't detect polyps. And polyps become cancerous. So the idea is early detection. Ten-year interval is appropriate. So this slide I got from the chairman of GI at Jefferson. So this is not Perry Weiner talking. This is Jefferson GI talking. Lifestyle. Again, it's the same old story I'm going to be harping on. Regular physical activity, eating properly, don't smoke, less processed meats and red meat, even though we all love barbecue and bacon, it's not the best thing for you. Increased risk comes with moderate to heavy alcohol use. And again, diabetes. It affects how your body handles sugar. The answer if you're diabetic is not to take more medication and still eating what you want. Diabetes is very simple. Diabetes is a carburetor. Diabetes is fuel injection. Sugar is the fuel. Pancreas and insulin is the fuel injector. It's the carburetor for those of us who remember carbureted vehicles. So when you eat sugar, your pancreas puts out the appropriate amount of insulin to make sure that your blood sugar stays stable, just like a carburetor does. That fuel, air, mixture. If you don't have enough insulin put out, or it comes out at an inappropriate time, your blood sugars vary, and that's diabetes. So the idea, when we take medication, metformin, insulin, whatever the pill you're taking, or the insulin, is to match your diet with the amount of medication to maintain normal blood sugar. The answer is not that I can eat what I want and I'll take an extra pill, which is what a lot of people do. My father-in-law notwithstanding. You know, he had like a bag of Snickers and a thing of potato chips and a can of Coke, and don't worry, I'll take an extra metformin. I'm like, Dad. And diabetes affects all of those things we were talking about before. Endothelial dysfunction, how our blood pressure is managed. It also leads to vascular insufficiency, which is the #1 cause of difficulty with erections. So, modifiable and non-modifiable risk factors for diabetes. Non-modifiable, things we can't change. I always wanted to be 6 foot. Family history you can't change. Age over 45 you can't change. Race and ethnicity we can't change, and for women if they became diabetic during pregnancy. These things can't be changed. The things that we can change, again, same old topics, physical inactivity, high body fat or body weight, hypertension, and high cholesterol, all modifiable factors. So the goals of a diabetes prevention program is a 7% weight loss. There are studies out there that have shown whatever your starting body weight is, if your blood sugars are too high, if you lose 7 to 9% of your body weight, your blood sugars will likely normalize, no matter what your starting body weight is. Combined with exercise, 150 minutes of physical activity a week, and that's just like, and I'm not talking about taking out your 12-year-old German Shepherd for a stroll down the street. I'm talking about physical activity where your heart rate goes up and stays up. So what can you do for your overall health? 7 things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No smoking. Watch your blood pressure. Eat properly to maintain low body cholesterols. I'm not sure what that one means. Fruits and vegetables. Watch your weight. Exercise. And
That was like a blood test.
yeah, blood testing. Thank you. Go for routine blood testing. Thank you. So those are the 7 things we can do. Look, I'm honest. If nothing else, I'm very transparent and honest. I'm a minute over. So I wanted to get to some questions. And I'll also say at this point, I'll hang around. If you guys have a lunch hour and you have like work to get back to, but I'm available. I also forgot to bring upstairs from downstairs. I have a whole bunch of pamphlets about our men's health program. And the men's health program at Jefferson is designed as a comprehensive facility. So if somebody were to make an appointment, we have a concierge who will take the phone call and schedule an appointment. And if you don't need to see me as the urologist, I've got cardiologists, endocrinologists, people who specialize in sleep apnea, people who specialize in general medicine and sports medicine. And depending on what your need is, you get plugged into the system. It doesn't make a difference how or which position you see because we all work together and communicate. So when I see somebody and I'm talking to them, and this is what the focus of my practice primarily is, if I see somebody that has a problem and I'm doing all the screening tests and their sugars are too high, their testosterone is too low, their cholesterol is too high, they're smoking, I think they need to see the cardiologist. Maybe they're not sleeping well, they have sleep apnea. All these people are affiliated in the program and we're all in one location so that we can make appointments for people to see people. And, it's kind of like a smorgasbord. You pick and choose as you want. So let's get to some questions. Questions for men's preventative health. Andrea sent these for the lunch and learn. Is erectile dysfunction age-related? Erectile dysfunction is age-related to the extent that we have accumulated bad habits over our years. So a guy who exercises regularly, doesn't smoke, minimizes alcohol, watches his diet, and has good family genetics can be sexually able into his 80s. Discounting heredity and genetics. Okay, first question. Is it physiological or psychological? Well, this is the main sexual organ, but that's not where the activity occurs. I will tell you it's combined, because if there's fear of failure or concerns about performance, it's very upsetting. And that's with any medical issue. If you think if you get a bad diagnosis about something, it causes depression, it causes anxiety, it causes stress. You're worried about finances, you're worried about your family, you're worried about, am I going to see grandchildren? I really want to look forward to this. I've been working my whole life and I don't want it taken away from me. Reasons why we don't want to go see the doctor, because you don't want bad news. So yes, is it psychological? It can be. If you're in a fight with your wife or your spouse, or you're feeling upset over finances, or you've got other overwhelming concerns that are very private and personal, and we all have them. It's not the same as when you're going away on a vacation, you're having a great time and really looking forward to being with the woman you want to be with, because then it's a great time. So the answer is both. Are there herbal supplements? No. No. Now, if you're looking at the back of car magazines and you're looking at late night TV, you're always going to find somebody, like they're selling this bottle of men's super hormone beta prostate, 10W40. It's great for the guys who are making it because they're making bank on that. Now, all these herbal supplements, and I'm not denigrating vitamins, and I'm not denigrating supplements because I do believe in them, but it's not a magic bullet. These things are vitamin supplements, they're herbal supplements, they're dietary supplements. They are not under the control of the Food and Drug Administration. So, who saw Breaking Bad? Great show, right? Same thing can be done with herbal supplements. You can buy a pill making machine, and after you wash your poodle in the bathtub, then put all your ingredients to make whatever pill you want, and buy a really nice bottle and a label, and get some investors behind you to put this on the internet at night, or wherever you want to put it, and package it for $19.95, and a 3-month supply for $27.95. And sell it to several 100,000 guys around the country. And it's perfectly legal and perfectly useless. What are the symptoms of prostate cancer? We talked about that before. Early on, no symptoms. No symptoms. Which is why you want to have your PSA done age 50 with no family history, age 45 with a family history, age 45 if you're African American, and if you're African American with a family history, age 40. For both of those, annually. How's prostate cancer diagnosed? The most efficient and effective way to diagnose prostate cancer is with a biopsy. Biopsies are done with a very tiny needle that are placed into the prostate, which is anesthetized if I do it in the office with you awake. Or if you want to have a little bit of anesthesia, we do it just like a colonoscopy. Count backwards from 10. Same deal. And small samples of prostate tissue about the size of really thin wire are taken out. They're a millimeter wide and about a centimeter long. And we take out 12 samples, and you get up and you go home. And the pathologist looks at it under the microscope and gives you a diagnosis. All the ancillary tests, MRIs, blood testing, urine testing, give you percentages. But it's not the same as a doctor taking a piece of tissue and looking at it under the microscope and saying, you're good and you've got a problem, or you've got a problem. There's nothing like somebody putting their eyes on it. Okay, I'm calling you up and you're running the service department and I'm telling you that something's not going on with my car. And when I start it up in the morning, it goes, what is it? And you're like, bring it in. How do I know from that? That's the way I liken biopsy versus all these ancillary tests that people want to do. There's some things we just have to do. You have to bring the vehicle in. I have to examine you. It can't be done over the phone, and it can't be done simply with an X-ray. MRI, for example, everybody's touting MRI. MRIs are only designed to look for those bad cancers, the bad actors in the family, which most people don't have. But you can have routine run-of-the-mill cancer, which potentially could be a problem in the future, and have a stone-cold normal MRI. What age should I get my first prostate exam? I think I talked about that. Does trouble urinating mean I have prostate cancer? Absolutely. Absolutely not. The majority of men who have a PSA between 4 and 10, 70%, do not have cancer. What is the PSA and what does it mean? I think I answered that question, did I? I think so. Could my PSA behind it not be cancer? I answered that as well. Is there an age I can no longer have intercourse? No. Those are all the questions.